Good morning, students. Today we are going to see the topic people-centered design thinking from the Unit 1 Introduction to Design Thinking. Let us uncover the human needs by understanding the quote from Simon Sinek. He said, "You can't understand someone's needs without walking in their shoes." Of course, to understand customer experience, to understand the customer problem, we need to walk in their shoes. So, the following symptoms, beyond the symptoms, we will have some deep insight about the customers. So, it is must to identify the pain points of a customer, and that will give motivations to develop a product or innovative idea solutions for them. And the developer had to conduct a user research by implementing an interviews, surveys, observations, all this practice. Also, the developer had to analyze user data and feedback. The developer also has to develop a user persona profile, and also to create a empathy mapping to have a better understanding on the customers. So the developer, they are doing all these things to recognize the biases and assumptions which are happening among the customers. So to get evolved with the right problem, there is a saying from Albert Einstein mentioned, a well-defined problem is half solved. So by keeping in mind, the problem has to be interpreted, has to be approached in various aspects. One of the aspects to create assumptions, that to identify the challenging assumptions and biases, and construct a questioning approach of what if or why, uh, to know the problem's effect and status, and also to identify the key stakeholders who are all having connections with the problem problem, and also to create the solutions for the problem and their needs. So also the developer has to define the problem statement with a user centric approach by avoiding the solution focused thinking. So there are various techniques are used or in practice to evoke the right problem, and some of the techniques are mentioned. One of the main technique is customer journey mapping, which will be useful to know the customer experience and the usage level of customer by understanding the customer journey mapping process. And there is also a technique called service blueprinting, which is also explaining the persona of a customer profile and customer usage of a particular product or an application. And there is another important interesting technique called SWOT analysis. The SWOT analysis means strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats of a developing solutions for a problem. And also there is also a technique called mind mapping that has to happen with the brainstorming. It's a constructive creativity process. And the last technique is a very different one, and it is interesting. It's called HMW statements. We call it as how might we. So we have to set off questions to be framed with HMW that we can see in the coming slides. So all these things we are putting into practice. The practice has to happen by incorporating the user research into the projects, and the developer has to use the design thinking for personal changes, and the developer has to practice empathy and active listening. Also, the developer has to implement the collaboration with a diverse set of stakeholders and to reflect the solutions by adjusting to the problem definitions. So we call this process, it's a call to action process. So when we say what is call to action, once the solution has been proposed, it has to be implemented into the next phase. So that immediate attention and requirement is call to action by start applying these people-centered design thinking immediately. That's what putting into practice. And finally, with the list of HMW questions, we can come to know how the empathy mapping is very important. The first one is like to improve the digital experience. There we have to make a question like, how might we design a more intuitive and navigation system for our website to reduce bounce rates, right? And to enhance the e-commerce, how might we create a seamless and personalized checkout experience for our e-commerce platform to increase conversions. To identify the sustainable packaging process, how might we develop eco-friendly packaging solutions resonating with environmentally conscious customers? And to have the understanding of customer support, how might we reimagine customer support for timely, empathetic solutions and improved satisfaction? And also to achieve the financial inclusion, how might we design an inclusive, accessible mobile app for simplified financial management in undeserved communities? With all these questions, we can identify the empathy mapping. So, thank you very much for the session.